The IRS in very, very hot water with many Americans tonight, and now the same IRS is going to play an important role in implementing Obamacare. Former Senator Jim DeMint is, well, he's not wild about that one, and he joins us. Nice to see you, Senator.
Hey, Greta.
All right, now I know you don't like Obamacare. That's a given, and I know that, and you'd like to see it repealed. But tell me, the relationship Obamacare to the IRS, is there any sort of way out of that one?
Well, over the last few weeks, we've had a chance to see how the IRS can work. They're too big. The code is so complicated, it gives them so much room for corruption. But
that's a good excuse for what, but you know, actually, I think it's much worse than that. But go ahead.
It is much worse, but Obamacare puts the IRS on steroids, Greta. I mean, it opens the door to for the IRS to come into all of our lives and every business life. I mean, you've got over 2,000 new IRS employees to implement Obamacare. There are 18 new taxes or penalties that have to be looked into, over $800 billion in new revenue. The worst part of it is for middle and lower income Americans who will now have the IRS looking at their income every year because the subsidies in IRS depend on your income being at a certain level. And then the IRS shares that with HHS and other agencies that might be involved with implementing it. It's a nightmare when you look at the IRS and what they can be capable of, and Obamacare opens the door so much wider for them.
All right, can we agree on one thing, is that, as you understand, is that they're not going to be looking and recording whether you've got a colonoscopy or not. They're not, I mean, they're not going into your health records. They're talking about income here.
Well, we don't know what it's going to lead to because...
Well, right, as it exists now, as it reads now, it's going to be a bill collector. And at best, it's an organization that it's so unwieldy as to be likely incompetent, and at worst, now we see that it might be corrupt on certain levels.
Obamacare has a committee to decide what they pay for, and because money is going to increasingly run short, they're going to be looking into whether things should be paid for. But Obamacare will tax you if you don't buy health insurance, and it will tax you if you do buy certain levels as far as the expense. So I think it's going to affect almost every American from an expense standpoint, but also additional vulnerability. I think businesses are seeing this as they get a grasp on what Obamacare could do to their business. The IRS is likely to close a lot of businesses down, just freezing their assets and studying all aspects of their business to find out if they're doing this correctly.
Well, there are two aspects. You talk about sort of the organizational aspect and how the IRS, you know, it's so complicated in their taxes, and how you say that it may like impair business or impede business as an operator. But that doesn't even take into account the fact that there are actually some people in there who are frankly corrupt and want to make life miserable for some. I mean, that makes it all, I mean, we're now seeing that. We're seeing some people, for whatever reason, decided that they were going to be vicious and target people.
We know they're targeting people, and we know this administration has been trying to get their hands on people who contribute to certain conservative causes in some of the bills that they've tried to pass. As a small businessman, this scares me to death of what the IRS could do. They don't have to be right. They don't have to have anything on you, but they can basically shut your business down looking into all aspects of this Obamacare.
And what people don't know, usually if you have a challenge with a tax of the IRS, you got to pay it first in order to be able to challenge it. That's the other ugly thing, is like you have to pay a tax, and then you get to challenge. You can't just say, I'm not paying it because I don't know it.
They can freeze your bank accounts until you pay it. They can do a lot of things, and they have too much power. They're obviously arrogant. There's a big streak of corruption in it. But Obamacare really does open this wide up, and so I hope every American will wake up and say, if you like what you saw from the IRS the last few weeks, you're going to love Obamacare.
Well, I'm just deeply troubled that Mr. Schulman, when he was head of the IRS, as he even knew about it and just looked the other way. Yeah. So it's anyway. Nice to see you, Senator.
Good to see you.
How's the new job? Good?
Oh, great.
All right. Nice to see you.
monopolies. So let me get this straight. This is a long sentence. We're going to be gifted with a health care plan we are forced to purchase and fined if we don't, which purportedly covers at least 10 million more people without adding a single new doctor, but provides for 16,000 new IRS agents, written by a committee whose chairman says he doesn't understand it, passed by a Congress that didn't read it but exempted themselves from it, and signed by a president who smokes, with funding. Same sentence, with funding administered by a Treasury chief who didn't pay his taxes, for which we will be taxed for 4 years before any benefits take effect, by a government which has already bankrupted Social Security and Medicare, all to be overseen by a Surgeon General who is obese and financed by a country that's broke. So what the blank could possibly go wrong?
Hey, Stuart, take a listen to President Obama in 2007 speaking to some union members. Maybe this was a little tip of the hand.
Okay.
My commitment is to make sure that we've got universal health care for all Americans by the end of my first term as president. I would hope that we can set up a system that allows those who can go through their employer to access a federal system or a state pool of some sort. But I don't think we're going to be able to eliminate employer coverage immediately. There's going to be potentially some transition process. I can envision a decade out, or 15 years out, or 20 years out.
That's the key phrase, isn't it? We can't eliminate employer coverage immediately. We're just stepping stones towards that goal. That is socialized medicine. That is the president's goal down the road.
It's interesting because just this morning I was reading some statistics that 79% of all people with health insurance get it through their employer.
Right.
Right. So that would mean that would be a humongous change.
Obamacare raises the cost of providing health care by private sector employers, so they squeeze people out and push them off into the public role. And we will go bankrupt with Obamacare. As a country, that's where we go.
And Stuart, the thing is, he didn't do it by himself. He did it with Big Pharma coming in, the health insurance came in, the AMA came in. They all got in, they dressed and played the part. They all allowed themselves to be swayed, and now they're all complaining. I have no sympathy for any of them.
Wait a second. There's a lot of bribes within Obamacare. The health insurers were bribed. You will get all these millions of extra people to cover if you just go along with Obamacare. And we'll do all kinds of things for you, but go along with it. A lot of bribes involved.
And exemptions.
And waivers.
And waivers.
That's huge.
Let's not forget the waivers.
Important part. All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
We'll be watching you.
This is a Fox News alert. You could soon be paying a whole lot more for your health insurance. It's a brand new hour of America Live. I'm Shannon Bream in for Megyn Kelly. The National Business Group on health care saying that health care costs for big companies are expected to jump 7% next year. That, of course, could mean higher premiums and more out-of-pocket costs for you. In fact, 6 in 10 employers in the survey plan on increasing the percentage their workers are going to have to cough up for their premiums. That's you and me. So that paycheck could actually wind up shrinking. We're going to check in just a moment with Charles Payne of the Fox Business Network to talk more about that and some other interesting details that were tucked inside the study, because it all gets down to how much you'll have to pay for in-network doctors, out-of-network doctors, out-of-pocket costs. Charles is there now. Let's check in with him. Charles, I want to get your reaction to what we're hearing out of this brand new survey this morning.
Well, you know, I think it's a confirmation of a lot of things that we've heard for a long time. Keep in mind, right now, our economy is growing at less than 2% a year. So if you start to think healthcare costs are going to be 7% or more, then to just put it, you know, according to the CEO of the study, that's unsustainable. That is a massive, massive hit to large businesses, and they have to make adjustments, including, not hiring people, raising prices, and delaying big-time projects.
Well, for the rest of us who are worried about, paychecks and people out there who can't even find a job or get a paycheck, how will this impact the overall specter of hiring and the fact that employers know that it's going to cost them for every single person they have on benefits? Does it impact how many they hire? Does it impact their choice to take away those benefits altogether? Absolutely,
in both cases. And it also impacts the quality of these. Listen, this mandate sort of says that, people have to be covered. It doesn't really say a lot about how you cover their spouses, how you cover their dependents, how do you cover retirees, particularly now early retirees. There are a whole lot of question marks in there, and there's absolutely no doubt that this is going to hamper any sort of efforts to hire. Listen, from large to small, this, of course, is a survey of large businesses, but we've heard it from small businesses as well. And even though the Supreme Court said it is a tax and it can indeed be levied against businesses, the fact of the matter is no one's really sure how they're going to deal with it. But we do know one thing that's crystal clear. The cost curve does not bend down. It continues to bend higher.
All right, so you mentioned, and to note for folks, 82 of the largest corporations in the United States are the ones behind this survey. You mentioned small businesses as well. We know we've heard a number of small businesses, and we've seen polling from them as well from the National Federation of Independent Business, that they're very worried, primarily because of uncertainty. But now we have numbers showing that we know, at least in part, that costs are going to go up. Are you saying that even larger businesses aren't insulated from these spikes?
Oh, absolutely not. You're going to see some large businesses maybe just push a certain portion of their employees into exchanges. Some may try to figure out other ways around this. There's still a whole lot of question marks. There's really very few businesses out there that I think exactly know how they're going to deal with this. Everyone knows one thing for sure, though, that costs are going to continue to go much higher. And remember, for the majority of businesses, large and small, their number one expense happens to be employees. You start to heap this on top of it, healthcare growing at 7%, and that means something has to give. And typically that means less hiring, and ultimately it could even mean more expenses for all of us, the end user of those consumer products and services.
Well, you mentioned the state exchanges, and there are a number of states saying they're not going to take part in that. We know the federal government can step in then in some of these cases and set up the exchanges anyway. So is it your best guess that despite the promises otherwise, folks may not be able to keep their doctor or their insurance they have now?
You're absolutely right. Even with these large businesses, a large portion said, we're probably going to end up putting a significant portion of our employees on these exchanges. And these exchanges, that's when you're really going to see separation. We're already seeing, in some cases, where, and you hate to use the R word, but that's indeed what it is, rationing of care starting to come into play. And with these exchanges, you're not going to probably keep the doctor that you're used to, that you're accustomed to, that you're comfortable with. And that was a large fear that the public, by the way, always had and got right.